If you ever looked really closely at an image on a newspaper, you'll notice that they're made up of little tiny dots. Look a little closer and you'll notice there's only 4 colors of dots: cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. Hypothetically, if you were to do this on your TV or computer screen, you'll find something similar happening. Instead of dots, you'll find pixels, and instead of the 4 colors mentioned before, you'll find 3: red, green, and blue. These are the 2 color models, RGB and CMYK. But what's the difference between the 2 models, and why do we need both of them? RGB stands for red, green, and blue. CMYK stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and key, which is essentially black. If you use Photoshop, you might have noticed that you can edit between the 2 color models, and you might have even noticed that they're on opposite ends of the spectrum when you go to color balance your photo. Both models will even provide a similar color range, but the reason you need both of them is because they're good at different things. RGB is an additive color model that mixes the 3 primary hues to create an array of different colors. Today, it's mostly used for electronics and computers, but it stems from an earlier understanding of trichromacy. The first color photos, in fact, were created by taking 3 black and white photos of the same thing, but each with a different filter: red, blue, violet, and green. When you superimpose the 3 different films, you get a full colored photo. RGB creates color by superimposing colored light on a black surface. The more light used, the brighter the color, and the dimmer the light, the darker the color. If you combine the full light of all 3 hues, you get a white light. CMYK, on the other hand, is a subtractive model. It's often used for dyes and printing. Unlike the light of RGB, we perceive CMYK according to the certain wavelengths that are absorbed. Those not absorbed are what remains visible. CMYK can be a little more intuitive. The less color you apply, the lighter the color, and the more color you mix, the darker the color. And black? The letter K stands for the term key, which is a term from the printing press when you had to key up or align your plate. There are multiple benefits of printing with black. Cyan, magenta, and yellow themselves don't actually create a pure black when mixed together. It's kind of more like a brownish color, so you need a black ink to achieve a really dark color. And that's really important if you're printing photographs, because the darker the black, the more contrast you have, and that creates the illusion of a sharper image. Second, it's much easier to print a black and white file. It would be really difficult to print a page of text with 3 colors. If one of them was like misaligned, you'll have random colors everywhere. In addition, printing a large amount of colored ink on a specific area to achieve a dark color can actually oversaturate your paper. That can cause ink to bleed or blur, and that's especially not ideal if you're printing fine details like type. Lastly, colored ink is expensive. Black reduces the amount of colored ink required, so it's much more economical to use black ink for really dark areas or unsaturated colors. So adding black is very practical. It's cheaper and faster than CMY alone. Wait, isn't RGB supposed to be the 3 primary colors that create all the other colors? Why can't RGB be a subtractive color model? Why can't you print with RGB ink instead? In some instances, RGB can have an upper hand. As a general rule, the more you mix physical pigments, the duller the colors will appear. This is because pigments aren't as pure as colored light. RGB can provide a more saturated color. It even creates darker colors very well. But notice how there's no way to create lighter colors like yellow. In the end, don't expect it to print exactly what you see on your screen. So when should you use each color model? In general, if you're going to be viewing it on a screen such as a website or video, RGB is the way to go. If you're printing it out, most likely it'll be a CMYK format, unless your printer specifies differently. And remember how I said you could switch between the two? Well, it turns out that the conversion between RGB and CMYK is not perfect. You're going to have to go through a color management program, so there's a lot of room for error. This might not make too much of a difference if you go one to another, but if you're making several passes between the two, you're going to have a loss of accuracy. If you just try to print a photograph that's in RGB format on a CMYK printer, the printer is going to have trouble reading the format properly. It'll try to convert the color itself through its own color management program, which isn't as accurate as Photoshop or Illustrator. Maybe that matters to you, maybe it doesn't. It all depends on the nature of your project and what you need from it. And what about scanning? Scanning is often in RGB, but if you're going to print it, hold off on converting the file until you open it in Photoshop or Illustrator. They're going to do a much better job of converting the color. Also, you should convert the file before editing for color, because you don't want to convert at the end and notice that you have to color balance and everything all over again. And that's the difference between CMYK and RGB. I hope that's helpful. Let me know if you have any questions or if I left anything out, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!